All right, we're live.
Hello, welcome to Diploma Sports, an intelligent intersection of politics and sports. My name is SC, and I'm joined by my two good friends, Ghost and Steven. Hello, Ghost.
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, Essie?
Doing well, and hello, Steven. Thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, glad to be back.
Yeah, so now we liked it the first time, so we are doing this again. Today we are going to be discussing a couple different things. One topic, which Ghost here is chomping at the bits to discuss, is we're going to discuss that controversial video in Chicago, right?
Well, there's nothing really controversial about it. I mean, it happened. You know, the controversy is not over was a retarded a retarded white adult.
Back up for people who haven't heard about what's going on and layouts at the ground.
Yeah, let me do my introduction first.
Oh, yeah.
Let's start at the beginning here.
As we can hear, he's angry about this, so we're going to discuss it, and then we're also going to discuss the economy, which will be hopefully the bulk of what we discuss. We're going to discuss things such as the minimum wage, a universal basic income, variety of different subjects, which I am less educated on than my friend Steven here, who has majored in economics and really enjoys the nitty-gritty of these kind of discussions. So yeah, we're going to touch upon that. Ghost, real quick, why don't you tell everybody where they can find us and all that fun stuff as well.
So yeah, as always, you can of course find us on Twitter, Gab, Minds, and Facebook. We are at Diploma Sports on Facebook. We are at Diploma_sports on Twitter and Gab, and on Minds we are also at Diploma_sports. You can find us on any of those sites, tweet at us, or the associated tweet variants on those. If you have any corrections for us, please send them out. If you think we're wrong on something, send us your opinion as well. We will do our best to get through all of them. I assume we're not going to have too much to sort through, though, being that this is the early stages.
We will address your 3 complaints very vehemently. Okay, so yes, so let's start. I'll let you have the floor, Ghost. Why don't you explain and try to be as objective as possible, if you will, about what is going on. Explain it to us as if we had never heard the story before.
Okay, so in Chicago, I believe a couple days ago, maybe a week ago now?
I think it was about a week.
About a week ago. There was I don't know what his specific mental handicap was. I believe he had ADHD and he was schizophrenic of some kind. And the story is that a white retarded man was apparently meeting with a former associate from high school. I've been told they were friends, but judging by watching the content of the video, they did not seem very friendly to each other, and that's made very clear through what happened. Now, what happened was, well, we only know what happened for a good 30 minutes of it because they were kind enough to live stream their act on Facebook.
Was it incidental or were they purposely live streaming it?
It was clearly purposeful. I mean, they were talking to the camera, they were communicating with commenters about what was going on. It didn't seem like, you know, this wasn't found footage. Okay, this is clearly them like, hey, like selfieing and like.
This is no 47% commenters.
No. These people felt like they wanted this to be seen, and among the obscenities that they uttered, they said, "Fuck white people, fuck Donald Trump." I mean, clearly the victim was white, but if the victim was mentally handicapped, I don't think he probably didn't even have the right to vote. So that, for me, it might have just been, that's just, you know, oh, look how cool we are. We're anti-establishment for saying fuck Donald Trump.
All right, you're gonna have topic here. Okay, so basically, there's this video, right, of this mentally handicapped person who's being basically tortured, right?
He is beaten. He is forced to drink toilet water. He is actually scalped. They cut his hair off to the scalp of his head, live on camera, all while people are watching.
Okay.
So in fact, the neighbors actually made a complaint saying there's too much noise in this room.
Take those noise complaints seriously, please. Okay, so that's horrible. Obviously, I think we can all say that pretty definitively. So why does this irk you so much? Why exactly are you so? What about this? It makes it more than just a terrible thing done by some terrible human beings to another, you know, someone who didn't deserve it. Obviously,
I mean, I hope he didn't deserve it, but you know, he might have. But let's assume he doesn't have the mental capacities to have room. But let's just say all that. Let's take all that aside. All right, this is a horrible act. It wouldn't matter who this had happened to. This could be anyone in the world that this happened to. This is a horrible act. What I find the most disturbing about this is that these individuals, no matter who they were, thought that this was okay to do, and 2, to broadcast this for the world. I want to believe this was just stupidity, that they're literally just this stupid and not just thinking, oh, because there's a darker side to this, which is, oh, this is okay, if not great to do. Like, if people will applaud us for doing this, like, that's the scarier part, is that they thought maybe this was okay to do.
But does anybody actually applaud them? I mean, is there my bigger point is, because you're coming at this with a lot of ferocity, and we can all get very angry about, you know, these things that happen, like these violent, horrific things that are happening to people who obviously don't deserve them for whatever reason. But what's the broader point that you're trying to make? Because I think you're trying to point this to some sort of different systemic, and you had mentioned something about being mad at Don Lemon. So what exactly are you mad about?
Well, it's not just Don Lemon, it's the Chicago Police Department, how immediately it was asking the question of, oh, who raised them? You know, like they finally started caring about what makes a monster. Now, don't get me wrong, Dylan Roof was a monster. He was a horrible, horrible, fucked up person. But I don't remember anyone on CNN going, how do you raise someone like this to be this hateful, this horrible?
They need to talk about that. I don't think that's true. I mean, they talked about that a lot. They mentioned about how he had, like, I
remember hearing a lot of talk about how this is a systemic problem and that there's this many hateful white people, and this is just bound to keep happening. I remember hearing a lot of that.
But hold on, there's statistics behind that. 538 has a lot of documentation and stats reports about how diversity causes issues, and I'm hearing a lot of reverb. I can hear myself. Is there a way to stop that?
It might be on your end, but because our microphones, my speakers are back there, my microphone is over here.
This is fantastic radio.
Yeah, fantastic radio. Exactly.
Is that okay? Well, is that like a huge problem? Should we pause for a second, or can we do that?
We can, but wait. So wait, you're hearing reverb? Try talking.
Yeah, I'm just hearing myself.
Are you hearing us? Oh, obviously you're hearing us.
Well,
yeah, you guys are clear. So I think
I'm
it's
not hearing
like
your reverb on your end. It might be an issue with your setup because you might be. All
right, let me try it now.
You're a bit clearer now.
Can you guys?
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
I guess it was the headphones. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
All right, cool. Well,
but go back. You were talking about 538 in statistics. Please elaborate.
Yeah. So what they point to is how diversity neighborhoods are, that they're more segregated, and thus there's a higher potential of crime. That crime is also greater magnitude, so it's not just as petty. It's a lot more aggressive. And so when you talk about the systemic issues that the police are bringing up, they're talking about how it's like, again, what creates a monster, the lack of education, all the issues that are too grave for just a police department to handle. Like, yeah, sure, they can go arrest people and put people in crime and be tough on neighborhoods, right, and start to militarize the police departments, which you see. The better approach saying, how do we fix people? How do we stop? These are human beings, for Christ's sake. Like, you can breed a great human. We don't, why are we creating labyrinths for monsters to be born out of? It's kind of crazy to think. So what happened is horrific, sure, yes. But how do we do, again, like, what about the systemic problems that they're really addressing?
Well, I think those are things we really do need to tackle and definitely need to consider. But the issue I'm making about this case in particular is that it seems that if we know if the roles were reversed, we would hear a lot more about systemic racism.
That's what I was waiting for.
We'd hear a lot more. We'd hear a lot more outrage. I mean, Chicago would be burning right now. Let's be honest. There would be riots in the city of Chicago if the races had been reversed. If a mentally handicapped black man had to be at white people, the city would be in flames.
Yeah, but
I have a 90%. I 90% guarantee you there would be people rioting in the streets for days. Okay, but here's the thing: I'm very happy that they're talking about what makes a monster. They're talking about the fundamental core of the problem. And here's one of the cores of the problem: human beings are fundamentally tribal individuals. Okay, people are tribalistic. They like people that are genetically similar to them. They do. That's how groupings has worked. That's why their tribes still existed when they weren't wiped out, because they have more commitment to each other than other people.
We like our football teams like tribes.
Too.
Yeah, I will never marry a Cowboys fan. That would never happen. Christine, please never become a Cowboys fan.
And we're trying to overcome this we're trying to overcome this nature that's in a lot of different animals and in humans as well. Unfortunately, that you look at churches, okay? Most churches are single race. I think it's like 80% of churches.
I mean, they like to pretend like they're not, but that's mostly true. Yeah.
You know, like we've got a Vietnamese church nearby. We've got. I'm sure there's a black church nearby. I'm sure there's not that many white people in the mosque.
Black churches are the best.
There's not that many white people in the mosque. But.
Right, but going to human nature, that's trust. What you're talking about, and you're bound to trust people who look similar, act similar. You know, have the same narrative as you do.
You have more close for those people, so you know you form your prejudice based on your experiences.
And it's history, and it's shown over time that, you know, when two cultures come together, any immigrants join, there's going to be some adjustment period. Not saying it's pleasant or good, but it does take time, and eventually people find a similar bond. You know, it happens over time, and so how fast it can happen, like we have technology. It's crazy that we have technology that can show the bad things, but how fast we can act as society is rather slow. Problems for ages. So to say that this is like a horror today, it's like, no, this isn't. Like, someone could have predicted this very easily. Like it is horrific that it happened, but like, I don't know, like crazy shit. Donald Trump tweeted that 4,000 murders. 4,331 shooting victims, so 762 murders and 216.
In Chicago, right?
Yeah, that's what the mayor was asking.
That was just Chicago.
Oh, that was just Chicago. Yeah, that's funny.
In the gun-free city of Chicago, yes.
Well, I guess my point on this, and I would push or emphasize what Stephen is saying, is I think how we solve it and how we move forward, I think is the opposite of what I think you would advocate, which is I think more. The more we spend time together, the more you actually get out and meet people who are Muslim, the more you get out and actually meet people who are Black or who are Asian or Hispanic. I mean, really, the whole gay rights issue it started to erode. It started to become less of an issue because people realized, hey, I have family members who are gay, and therefore I can't hate gay people because I love my family member. And I think ultimately that's the answer. I mean, how you stop this sort of race on race violence, and I don't necessarily know. Too, that's I guess the part that I would question about this whole issue is can we determine that they picked on this person because they were white? And just because they said fuck white people doesn't mean that they necessarily target. You know, like that's an easy thing to say. I say that every once in a while.
I mean, that gets more to the core of my problem with this, and I think certain organizations within our society, you know, I'm not talking about like Black Lives Matter. They're just the most egregious example of just kind of this. I mean, the rhetoric is just so.
Well, we could spend a whole other podcast talking about race. So we'll do that.
But let me just get to like the fundamental core of like these people have been taught through public schools, through Marxism, through all this political theory that wealth has kind of all been stolen. You know, no one creates wealth. That like if someone has money, it means they took it from someone else, right?
I mean, I wouldn't.
But there is a strain of political thought popular in college universities that tells you that if you take the only way to make something is to take it from someone else. The only way to make
it's a zero-sum game.
Exactly. That they see the world as a zero-sum game, and then they're also taught at the same time that there's no such thing as mental genetic biodiversity, that everyone has the same brain power, brain capacity as every other person on the planet. So the only conclusion within that framework that they're taught is that you're not doing well because someone's exploiting you. That's the only possible conclusion. And don't get me wrong, there is examples of exploitation. Sometimes people are being exploited. Sometimes plenty. And the government often is involved in a lot of these situations. But they're taught that the only reason they can be failing is because someone else has taken it from them. And when you breed that sentiment over and over and tell these people over and over, no, you're only fucking up because whitey hates you. You're not getting a job because white people want you not to get ahead. They're specifically out to stop you. And you know what? Maybe there is. Maybe there's a portion of the population that does want to keep people of other races down.
Well, that's my point. Why can't it be both? Like, it doesn't have to be 100%.
But my answer is it's much less that some people are trying to keep you down and much more of that people have different capacities. There's tons of white trash poor people that are not doing well, that are not as capable as plenty of minority people.
So I don't think it's necessarily like politicians, and go in with an inherent racism. Maybe some do, but what I believe it is just an extreme self-interest that they're representing themselves. And that's the problem, is that we've come to a place of like the lack of trust. And you can see in this extreme, you know, Chicago is one of the diverse neighborhoods in America, cities. And look at what the diversity has caused, incredible crime, horrific events. But when it comes to politics, each other, if you don't trust your neighbor and what they say and do, why are you going to trust the politicians? And therefore, it doesn't matter what anyone says, because you stop looking to the government and to the community to help solve your problems, and you become siloed in whatever you feel comfortable in, whatever race, whatever socioeconomic class. Doesn't matter what your tie is, but you go back to that.
Well, maybe Chicago needs to elect a Republican. I mean, I'm not a Republican myself, but for I think 60 years of Democrat mayors, and there hasn't really improved trust in the community.
Well, no, because it's at the same time, you could be a Democrat or Republican. It doesn't really matter, because, like you said, it doesn't matter if you're white or black, because it's not a general stroke. Because if the politician is going in for their self-interests, they're going to help their community, which is like maybe their neighborhood or maybe their socioeconomic class, which, so again, it's not about
a big problem.
Again, if you're the mayor, you can, so it's like, am I going to help, if I become the mayor and someone's, like, what am I going to do first? Well, I'm going to, give tax incentives to people who live in my community, rich people, so I can, build up my neighborhood, or, I want to build a new house or do something. You can abuse the power to whatever you're.
Or give welfare to the poor people that overwhelmingly voted you in. And that
True.
Way
you
they
can.
Won't go against it because they don't want that clawed back.
And people do that. I mean, but then you can go out, on your campaign and go make promises, or, in the last year of your election, what's famous in South Africa politics, I shouldn't joke, but it's like every 4 years there's this economic government boom. And people were wondering why, and then they realized that that's when the elections were, and so every 4 years you go, you take all the money for 3 years, and during the fourth you blow them out and you build all this new stuff. And so people look at the president saying, oh wow, look what he's done for us this year, like, this is great. If we vote him in, maybe he'll continue doing it. Let alone do you realize that's not the case.
Yeah.
And the cycle continues. Yeah. So it's like, to me, there's just an inherent lack of trust, because I think that there's incredible self-interest.
Yeah, and I think just kind of to wrap this all up, I think that's we have a lack of trust, and therefore we don't trust our institutions, and we don't trust each other to sort of work together to fix those institutions. And then when you throw in race and sort of the whole tribal elements of that we exist kind of in human nature, this is where you have these things happen. And again, obviously, terrible, horrible thing that happened. But I think we can transition, unless you have anything else you want to say.
Kind of take on that point. I mean, there's also, yes, there's a great amount of distrust, but then when you have single incidents like police shootings that are very rare, always too many when they happen, whenever it happens wrongly, right? You have these, you inflate them, and you give this false narrative that these are happening at disproportionate rates, which they aren't. You tell these people they're not safe in their own communities, even with the people who are supposed to keep their community safe. Well, of course they're not going to trust them.
I'm going to push back on that. It's not disproportionate rates.
Yes, they are. It is proportionate to the rates of crime they commit.
Well, just because you commit a crime does not mean that you should be executed.
No one is saying that. But however, the amount of crimes you commit will definitely increase the amount of encounters you will have with police officers.
And your encounters with the police should not end in your death. It doesn't matter.
No one's saying your encounter with the police should end.
No, but it doesn't matter. Cops, we should need to expect a higher standard of the police officer to be able to restrain himself enough to tackle you and arrest you. But
if you reach in your pocket, you can murder a cop in 3 seconds. They don't have that luxury.
I think what you're just making, Gross is making the point that probability says that the more crimes you commit, the more times you're likely to run into police. Thus, if you're doing something heinous and the police have a reason to suspect you, you're more likely to get shot. What Nick Sia is saying is basically the issues for all of that, and what causes people to get to that point. But I know what you guys are saying. Like Mike's saying, at that point,
Well, we'll say Black Lives Matter and the police issue and racism, because there's
a lot more to unpack.
Ghost and I have argued with this extensively for years, and we'll bring Steven in and we'll do a whole thing, but we'll tease that for next time, because we can spend a whole good 2 hours on discussing this particular issue.
But I have no love of militarizing the police force and this excessive intrusion into our private lives. It's like, yes, it's terrible that this all has to happen, but at the end of the day, you can't affect any change if all the good people are dead.
Yeah, this is kind of an offshoot, but you guys hear that story about that new Amazon thing that records, like Amazon Home? I forget what it's called. It's like Alexia or something.
Alexa, the Echo,
yeah, they basically they caught some murder, and I forget the details. I should have come more prepared. But they basically had they caught him, and his evidence was him muttering to himself in his home, and they recorded him for it. Now, clearly, a huge invasion of privacy, and on principle, we should definitely be opposed to that. But I mean, are we?
Did they get a warrant for it?
I don't know the details.
I mean, if they got a warrant
I
to obtain
believe
that
they
data,
did,
then I don't see a problem as long as they went through the legal process.
It's kind of a funny story, though. Minus the people who were killed, obviously. Not funny.
But, it does bring up an interesting point, though, about what you sign your rights away to. Did you know that the UK Instagram, 40% of them are from like 12 to 15 or 17? So like all minors, and this UK law firm rewrote the entire terms and services into simple to read language. And it's only like 15 pages, but the rights you give away is crazy. And so like now parents and kids can actually understand what they're giving away and what people are taking. For example, like this guy even realized what Alexa was doing.
Yeah, probably not. There's no idea. He's probably muttering to himself like a crazy person about how he's going to kill these people, and then he came back to bite him.
No, you sign away a lot of your rights to a lot of things, and there's been a lot of things that the government used to allow them to do, like this. Now a lot of companies put in this arbitration agreements in all of their products, and it used to be the government would just say, no, we protect consumers. We don't think it's fair that you sign away your rights to arbitration just unilaterally, and then they decided, oh nope. All of a sudden, they recently decided that wasn't the case anymore. Mm-hmm. Now, on a fundamental basis, I don't think that the government should be that involved in a consensual relationship between two parties. But it's kind of just like, wait, why did you change your policy? And I wish they would maybe elaborate on that or explain to us why they were changing that instead of just, all of a sudden, I think the right lobbyist hit the right note and that changed.
Bingo. So yeah, that's actually a good response from both of you. I wasn't expecting as much. I was kind of expecting a cheap laugh on that. So yeah, if let's seamlessly transition into the economy. So today, our main topic, we're going to discuss the economy. Like I mentioned before, my friend Steven here is very affluent when it comes to the art of economics. So well, I'll let you guys kind of control the floor more. I'll more be the probing person that asks questions, kind of inserts things on my own here and there. But I'll let you guys kind of go back and forth because I think your guys' discussion will be a little bit more interesting than my little jabs that I can throw in here and there. So let's start with the first big one. This is kind of the one.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, okay. There's this thing that was basically the main thing that is talked about probably in the news the most, I would say, concerning issues in the economy. And I could be wrong about this. Don't tweet at me. But it's probably the minimum wage. We've seen marches about, make it 15. I forget the specific slogan. Making it a livable wage. We've heard terms like that. The idea that people are being paid very less than they should be, despite record billions of profits. That would be my argument personally, is that a minimum wage is an obvious thing that we need to increase. But like I said, I will step back and let this happen. So first, I'll let Steven open up just your initial thoughts on the minimum wage. I don't know if you want to talk about the pros and cons of it, or if you just kind of want to address your initial, opinion of it, and we'll go from there, kind of thing. But the floor is yours right now.
Right. Thanks. So first off, I guess the pros and cons of it. Well, just the pros and cons, and then get to the reality. I guess the pro of raising the minimum wage to give all these people money and to boost consumption, which essentially would say that when I get paid, I'm going to go buy something at my local grocery store, and then you keep buying stuff locally, and that can raise consumption and create a hot economy where things are being made and transferred and goods are moving across places where everyone has a job, so you need more labor, and demand increases, so supply has to match that. So that's one pro. However, reality would say that most people are going to pay off debt. Most people, if they start to buy imports, which are cheaper because the American dollar is getting stronger, again, the con is it's going to hurt businesses. Like, how do you imagine, if you have a cash flow, where do you squeeze out the extra cash? Like, that's just not possible.
Like a company that I work for, it's like a small business. And so for them to be able to pay everybody $15 an hour, is a significant hardship for them, especially if they have to do it instantly. So I get that point.
But you have, but at the same time, your company might be okay because you have kind of monopoly on public transportation, in that specific sector. So it's like, but for a company that sells books, for example, like in the book or whatever item they sell, it's fixed, right? So they can't really raise their prices because that's what the market's priced at.
Mm-hmm.
People aren't going to buy it. So like, what happens to them? So that's where I see the con is like, well, you're going to stifle business. Right now, how I look at it is, in reality, the Federal Reserve is on the move to raise the interest rates. And it should have been raised a while ago. They've halted a couple of times. So right now, the chair put out a press release, and she spoke, and I forget what her first name is, but Yellen is
Janet Yellen.
And I'm a fan of her, but she said, yeah, we're going to be on a course to raise the interest rates, and keep our target of inflation on track. And
well, if you recall, I think it was last year we were supposed to be on track for several interest rate raises, and then the Chinese economy had a momentary stall because the world was panicking over us raising our interest rates, and then they backed off doing it.
All right, well, speak to me in layman's terms. What does that exactly mean in
Well,
English?
You go.
Just to conclude the thought, because I'd love to hear yours. So what essentially raising the interest rate does is that, again, you raise the interest rate. So if the interest rate goes from like 0.2 or a quarter of a percent to a percent, every dollar you put in is now earning 75% more savings. So it's going to incentivize people to save more. It's going to give a higher return. So those people.
Let me give a little bit of I have to understand this a lot more, but the way to understand like the Federal Reserve rate, which is like the lowest interest rate, which is the one they're talking about raising, it's the baseline for all interest rates. So when the Federal Reserve rate rises, it means that when a bank goes out and borrows money to lend to you, they're being charged more. However, it also means that in order for them to make more money, they have to raise their rates as well. So basically, all your interest rates are going to go up across the board.
Snowballs the effects for credit cards, for mortgages,
well,
for
credit
student
cards.
loans.
Credit cards are just the same for their late fees, like because of a law Obama put in that said you can never raise rates again. Therefore, everyone just said, okay, your late fee now is just the maximum rate we could charge. So everything. That's why you're always like 26%. Or 25% or whatever it is on credit cards, like because of a law that was supposed to protect people from credit card interest, because they were not going to be allowed to ever raise it again, they basically maxed out the rate they could as soon as the law went into effect in order to, still be able to get profits off it. But as far as, yes, home loans, car loans, all these things, their fundamental baseline is that federal funds rate, that 0.2, it's 0.5% now?
It's dismal. Basically, we've flatlined. I mean, we've gone as high as 18% in like the 80s, but we were like steadily around, through the 2000s, we were hovering between 6 and 4%.
But it also, if you understand anything about the capital asset pricing model, the way that the federal funds rate builds into that is that in order for people to, you don't really sell financial assets, but basically yield on everything is going to go up. Because the yield on like your bonds is going to go up, the yield on your stock should go up, because otherwise people aren't going to buy it. It's the only way to justify buying that financial asset is if it's that much more above the federal funds rate. The federal funds rate is the artificial zero for any financial investment.
So then that brings up a good point. And so people in the past, when it was high, bought it, and now it's flatlined, so they're not getting much of a return. And so now the return they're going to get
during that time that people still have are worth a lot because they're still getting a good.
Right, but how many people are in a solid socioeconomic status? What percentage of the American public has that?
Not to say that wasn't that a lot of people made that decision back then. I mean, not many people predicted the financial crisis. I mean, there's a lot of factors. Right. I mean, but timing was everything.
To me, in layman's terms, basically the Fed signaling the interest rate to me says two things. It does two things. One, it signals confidence in the economy that it's growing at a steady enough pace to raise the rate, right? Because it's become harder to borrow. Side note, we're raising it like from pennies to you're paying a quarter to now 50 cents. Like it's really nothing. Like we're still stealing money from the government. In my
Well, here's
you know,
the,
at one point it was free. At one point you could just you were under a lot of scrutiny, but don't get me wrong. Like it's so low, it's ridiculous.
well, but here's the thing: they think the economy. They're telling us the economy is strong, but their inflation number is bull. Let's be honest. The inflation numbers we're getting from the Fed are not legit. I mean, they're using like hard goods like phones and TVs, things that are not as they don't move as much with inflation as other things in order to level out the level of inflation to make inflation look better than it actually is.
Well, all right.
So
Well,
saying that they're excluding goods out of.
There are certain goods that should not be included, like in our CPI measure of inflation, that are artificially keeping the rate of inflation low to make it look like, oh, look, inflation's great. We don't need it. We can raise rates. Like, and the economy is not as strong. If you think of all the people that are in worse jobs than they were before, or are working less, or are discouraged workers, or out of the workforce, the 96 million people who aren't working.
So your argument is basically that it's a false hope. So raising interest rates would be disastrous, or are you saying
I do think that this interest rates, because right now we with low interest rates, we can continue this illusion that we have a great economy. We can keep thinking, oh no, things are great. Look, we're raising interest rates when we're basically at zero. We're at like the worst point are. And all we do when there's a recession is we lower interest rates as low as possible so people will finally be willing to lend money because they have the cheapest possible cost. But the economy's not that good, and everyone knows it.
Well, how then, and this is obviously a very broad question, then how exactly, because it sounds like what Steven's saying, and obviously, again, forgive my ignorance, it sounds like if you increase the interest rates, then for the average everyday person, you may actually be helping them, which may actually inevitably grow the economy.
Well, you're helping them save, because if you increase the federal funds rate, saving rates are going to go up on bank accounts.
But also like petty investments and stuff too,
yes,
right?
Yield will go up.
So isn't that ultimately why is that not an effective way to? Because then wouldn't it? Because isn't then that sort of that false inflation? Wouldn't that necessarily be corrected? I mean, again, forgive my ignorance, but why is that a crazy statement? Why is that not an effective means to boost the economy?
If we were a closed economy, I think, and had no imports.
Well, I mean,
it was weird.
America was a closed economy.
Yeah, I know. Awful that would be. Awful, terrible. That'd be really bad, honestly.
We could be self-sufficient, but just the fact of us just like being a closed economy to me is it's terrible. World might as well just stop today.
Yeah.
Not saying our dominance, but just to pull out that big of a puzzle piece.
No, I am not advocating at all to become a closed economy. I think that'd be. But what I'm saying is there's outside factors involved. There's other countries' Federal Reserve policies. There's other countries' trade policy. There's so many other things involved that it's not just in a vacuum, but it is a very powerful thing because we do help set worldwide yield.
So you mentioned that we didn't do it because China was afraid or something like that. So basically, by us increasing our interest rates, we'd be royally screwing over China. Then is that?
It depends.
It depends. Go ahead, Mike.
No, you.
Again, no.
Because for some reason, the dollar is kind of magical and reverses things. Like when we increase the interest rates, you would expect the dollar should shrink. Yeah, the dollar is it's always strengthened. It strengthens during the worst times, though. During the recession, it's strengthened when we lower the interest rates. So, we need to. No shit. Sorry, I lost my point there.
Well, I mean, the dollar also has the virtue of the entire U.S. military and nuclear arsenal to back up us not defaulting on the dollar. I mean, yes, China probably not defaulting on its currency unless they get crushed under the weight of the debt bubble they're accumulating in their economy. Russia, I mean, they've been weathering this natural resource price just. It's dropped like crazy. I mean, they're still around. They're hurt by it. They're economically, they're slow. I wouldn't say they're in recession just yet. But other countries don't have those virtues of strong militaries and strong financial backing like we do. That's why the dollar weathers. When speculative currencies drop while the American dollar stays strong because people trust the American dollar will still be valuable in 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's a little bit more transparent than the Chinese democracy or Chinese democracy. Well,
That's
some
a good
parts
joke.
of
Chinese
it. They're housies.
you
But,
can call them have. Maybe Hong Kong, not Hong Kong. Maybe Hong Kong, kind of.
their economic
Try to take that away.
sector.
All right, so I think we've gotten a little bit off of the minimum wage. So
Yeah, I haven't even got to say my piece
So,
about the minimum wage.
So we're talking about increasing the economy, about things to make it better. Stephen kind of went over the pros and cons for you. I think you broke it down pretty soundly, just to kind of re-sum it up to get us back on topic. A certain pro would be the theory is that if you're having someone who's making 15 an hour instead of 9 an hour, they're going to spend that extra $6. It's going to boost the economy. Ultimately, wages in means more wages for everybody, more money, etc. That's the sort of the general pro issue for it. The con is that they would realistically spend it on debt and other things. It wouldn't necessarily benefit the economy. What you would have is ultimately then less workers and less really essentially than people working in, because businesses would have to crumble. Small businesses, even large businesses, would use that as an excuse to lay off workers, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't
let me push back though.
Well,
on some of that.
I'll let you. I'm setting you up.
Sorry, let me push back on some of that minimum wage stuff. So you say that companies are making record profits, okay? And how many of those companies that make the most record profits pay their lowest workers minimum wage in America? Like maybe McDonald's. That might be it. It might be McDonald's. Walmart doesn't pay minimum wage. Walmart pays above minimum wage.
How much above minimum wage?
Not much. No, not much for the quality of labor they get. I mean, they're paying way above market rate, which is less.
Okay,
than
well,
minimum
here I'll
wage.
push back on this because
But aside from that point, that most people making record profits don't pay their workers minimum wage, and they're in completely different business.
But paying them $10 an hour is still terrible. I think that's the general point. And like I said, I'm going to let you guys mostly talk about this.
That would not have been terrible if we had not devalued our currency so much over years and years. Now, fundamentally,
it's literally just costs more to live.
Okay,
it's more expensive to live. You need more money to be paid for.
Fundamentally, the minimum wage is telling two consenting parties, how they have to interact in a relationship. And you wouldn't do that to a gay person. You would not tell him how he can interact with another party.
I mean, you're treating this as if it's consent, and I'll push back.
Yes, because they get the employer.
When you have to work to support your family, it's not consent. You take whatever job you can get, and if they're paying you dirt, then you're still going to do it.
You're trying to consent with an employer to work for them. And the employer has a rate that they want to pay.
Your consent is that you have to eat. It's very different. And somebody has, if you have to work.
No, we have food stamps. We have EBT. We have all these other programs. Okay, no.
I'm currently on government assistance. I can tell you it is impossible to live off of it if you need.
No one's saying you should. No one's saying that should be the case. Okay, and if you
I'm not even saying should. I'm saying
if you want to raise rates, you have to get rid of low-skilled labor that is in here unnecessarily.
No, if you want to raise rates, then you can actually pay people a decent wage. But whatever. I'm not trying to argue about that. Break down your point.
Okay.
Please argue your full point. I won't interrupt you.
All the minimum wage is a dysgenic program against small business. Because large businesses like McDonald's, they can afford the R&D and the capital investment to get to automation. So one, you're going to clearly destroy jobs because small businesses, restaurants do not make good margins. McDonald's only makes tons of profit because they have volume, because they have restaurants in almost every city. It's not because they have this amazing business model that just churns out profit. No. The labor is like 33% of their cost, and you're asking them to pay 150% of that now? They wouldn't be able to make a profit. They're going to automate. You're going to be automated ordering. You're going to have like 2 people running a skeleton crew while the food is made automatically. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but all you're going to do is you're going to put these people out of business. Walmart is just going to hire less people, or they're going to find some way to do things more automated. So you're going to have less people working for more money, and you're going to create less value for the economy. You have more people on government assistance, less people paying taxes, more being taken out of the economy than is being put in. This is what you're creating artificially.
Okay, so I'll take that all into account. And I agree as well. I mean, what you're saying is logical and sound. It makes sense. I guess my pushback is, so your solution is, okay, so we get rid of all of the people who are here illegally. We get rid of all the unskilled low labor. That will therefore bring wages up because people will then be able to bargain for competitive prices.
Unfortunately, no. The unfortunate factor is there's so much government assistance, and all government assistance is saying, well, you can accept this wage, but you have government assistance, so you can accept an even lower wage than someone who's not on government assistance, and therefore government assistance is artificially depressing the wage.
But is it not that they're getting government assistance because of the low wages? I feel like you're giving people too much credit to like count out how much they're getting from government assistance, and therefore they can get paid less. People would rather get more money from their jobs and not get government assistance.
Yes.
There's not a world where there's not people that like being on government assistance. There are a few, but it's not the full scope of people on government assistance.
But the problem is, you could have 10 people. If 9 of them would rather make more money than be on government assistance, all it takes is the 10th person who goes, you know what? No, I can take that lower wage, and I want to make sure I get that job, to screw the other 9 people out of a higher wage. That's all it takes is one person.
Right. Well, that's why you have a wage set up. That's the whole point. Then that's why if you have it certain that you.
But you will destroy small businesses who are the best chance of creating more competition.
Can you not have exceptions?
No,
Nick,
Walmart.
Nick, I agree. Oh shoot. I agree with Ghost, because what he's saying is that if you can pay people whatever wage, you can have all of these essentially garage businesses. So you can be running off of like the bare minimums. So, you know, if I can pay rent, it's like I can actually hire a real employee right now to come, you know, work next to me in my room and pay them $1 an hour and saying, hey, if our startup makes it, you have sweat equity, you're a 50-50 partner. You know, but right now I can legally pay you dollars. So the government can get tax on that $1 or $2, because right now they're losing any job that would be paid minimum wage or below, you know, or actually I would agree with Ghost saying that the government would suppress it. So let's call it like, I don't know, $2 is like the suppressed wage, right? Because it's not an absolute zero, because there is some market interference. I do agree with that. As there is with anything. We're not in a perfect market, but that's beside the point. So it's like, that's where I see some value. I do see abuse in that. Yeah, totally. Big companies can abuse you and say, hey, if you don't want to come here for, you know, $2 an hour, we'll automate your jobs. Like, no problem. We have no problem doing that. Actually, we'll probably do that.
Then what you know, you love to come up with solutions, and I do too. So what exactly you know, what is the, I mean, and this is obviously a complicated question, but what is the answer then? Is it something where there's just too much low skilled labor, and people need to get better educated and get better jobs? Or is this something where, you know, what's your thoughts on a solution or an idea?
I mean, I think technology is trickling along to the point where automation can take over most jobs and actually help us become self-sufficient. And that's where I'd feel more comfortable talking about reducing the minimum wage. But I don't think technology is almost there, you know, where we can grow food automatically in our homes, and, you know, or like, you know, farmers are very intelligent about, you know, getting 100% yield crop, whatever. So I think technology is the key to that. To taking it away. So saying it doesn't matter what you do, because, you know, the cost of goods is so cheap and everything else is so cheap. We can make and produce all this stuff. You know, it's like, what happens when you automate all of the work for something? You know, so you do walk in and, you know McDonald's thing, you know, so you're the first person to touch that burger. I'm dead serious. You know, the cow never saw a human. You know, it got to, you know, run around, and then you're the first person to touch the burger, because everything from killing it to cooking it to packing it was automated.
Yeah, and the problems with that whole industry is a different discussion for a different time, certainly. But I mean,
but call it anything, like the Amazon store, you know, or any goods. A car can get built up, you know, in the shop by, you know, all the tools, and then driven to you because it's a smart car, and you don't even drive it. So it's like, to me, we're getting to a point where technology can help us, our skill sets to the place we need to be. But to me, like, minimum wage won't matter.
But so what happens when this happens? So ultimately, we're automated. There's no front counter person at McDonald's anymore. All of this stuff. So that happens. Then doesn't that not just increase the amount of people on welfare? Does that not just increase? I mean, there's even less jobs then. So what's our turning point? Do we just say that these people have to adapt, or you know, what's our next step then after we get automated?
I have a very clear answer for that. And my answer is, we have no idea. I think our best solution is to take as many things out of the way as possible and just let the market decide the solution. I think Who knows what we could be doing? Or do we really think that we'd be sitting here with computers in our pockets, pulling them out and sending messages to each other remotely 50 years ago? I mean, we had maybe telephones back then. Do we really think we could do that anywhere in the world and just data mine for data?
Yeah.
Do we think we were creating value by just reading through messages people were sending on an electronic network? Okay, I think we have no idea. We could be like monetizing people's like brain processing power in a few years. You can plug like a chip in someone's brain and say, here, you know, get through all this data. Who knows what we're going to be doing? And I don't think the government should be laying out what people should be doing.
Do we have a brain? I think I might have heard of like someone testing a brain transplant. So, or
Well, I
yeah,
know Toasty has been a fan of just taking his brain and putting it in a robot so he can live forever.
I would have no problem with that as long as they worked out the kinks.
I mean, Elon Musk is
Really
landing.
watch your body when you're 80. I mean, come on, you want?
Yeah, to be fair, I kind of agree.
So it's like, you know, I see that you have a valid point that we're at a sticky point right now, that some people are very close to the ledge, or on the ledge, close to the edge. And how do we create a safety net to help them from falling off? And if they do fall, how do we catch them, you know, and bring them back up to societal?
Yeah, because ultimately, right, it's not good for us to have because we already have a problem as it is, but obviously as things become more automated, that's just going to create an even bigger problem.
The baseline of the economy is the basic education level. And right now it's horrible. You can't walk across the nation and say everyone has the education of even a third grader.
But who has a monopoly on that education system?
I'm not talking about how
But
you
I'm
know,
just
the government
saying.
does. And I agree. You know, but actually, how then I'll beg to question how we get educated. You know, maybe we need to set a new standard. But to me, it's like a 12-year, you know, children are growing up today. To me, I want to see what elections look like when a politician has their entire life on Facebook.
Oh, we'll get
there.
there.
No, I mean we're gonna get there. We'll see it definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
But you look at like, okay, well, what's technology gonna be like then? When it's like you can speculate you can dissect someone's life literally by scrolling through it. Kind of crazy, you know, photos attached.
By then.
And so people can, you know, who knows what analytics would be like, you know, be like, oh, well, look at their speech pattern develop over the course of the years. You know, they're a sociopath type speaker in 5th grade. It's like, well, should he be president? The guys, you know, whatever. So it's like they're
You get in Trump's head when he was 10 years old. I mean, that was certainly interesting.
I think it was just winner all over on replay, but no, I think you know another point. We don't know what the future holds for people, but my point is that it's so hard to get alternatives to government education because the government has such a strong financial backing. They've got such a they can get in any city, they can get permits anywhere. That no one can compete with that.
But that's what I'm talking about. Schools might not be. The market could suddenly say that, guess what? The most educational thing you can do.
But that's why I didn't say school.
Is buy your
education. The education.
Well, education, but again, to me, education is. I think we're thinking of it as a classical model, if you will, of saying education is a school accredited. And what I like to beg to differ is just human education, right? So are you smart? Are you intelligent? Do you have the capacity to learn something new, retain it, and then use it to create something else? You know, so in that sense, I would rather, if I had a kid, I would give them technology and I'd say, whatever interests you. If you want to be the best video game player in the world, you know, because you love to play for 24 hours a day, do it. Be the absolute best, and you can beat a video game faster than anyone, right? Like, sure, let's figure out how to craft that into a career. So I wouldn't say follow to the traditional models. Like, if you love building, you know, buy them a bunch of Legos, you know, let them build stuff all over the house.
Well, I wasn't just specifically talking about traditional classroom, classical education. When I have children, I homeschool them. I don't want to send them to government education specifically. No, I'm serious.
They're gonna be.
No, I think like not, dude. A kid with Google, a curious child with the power. It's like what a curious. Dude, it's like you can search with Google, and you have to be, you know, to me that's where adult supervision and making sure they find good information. But there's such an abundance of information, and to me that's what I get at is like technology allows for, to sum it up, technology allows for access of education or access of information, and that can be educational.
Well,
And so it can be,
agree
it can be dangerous too. It can be very dangerous and misleading and create a very bad scenario, but it has the potential of being very educational, where it's like a kid can learn something by watching YouTube videos.
I
And
absolutely agree. But here's my other thing. I have problems with the way classical education is done. I mean, we sit kids in classrooms for, I think, sometimes 3 to 4, 7 hours a day.
It's longer than work shifts usually.
Yeah, it's like they're sitting there for like 4 hours and they never get out. And have all these young boys who are put on Ritalin or Adderall because they can't sit still in the classroom because we were animals not too long ago. You imagine sitting still for 7 hours before not going outside? It's ridiculous.
Dude, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't agree with classical education like whatsoever. I couldn't agree with you more. And that's even to the university level. Like the way it's not to say that they're doing it wrong. I think they're doing the best they can in the model that's created. I would like to argue a different model. So it's not to be bashful on them. It's to say, here's the potential alternative that I can see. And it's just, again, being more topic based and again, if someone's extremely curious in a certain subject, let them explore that to the furthest level. So to me, what I like to see education like about K through 12, have kindergartners and 12th graders in the same, academic. You have to achieve math and reading and writing, right? So those are the 3 main skills. And you have K through 12 achievement levels. If some kid is really good at math and wants to go level 12 first, and then bring up the other 2 slowly, because
I don't think we should hold anyone back.
Right. So it's I think a couple of models are going to that more experimental, or putting people more in the mental capacity. Judging people not by age but by interest, I could say, and where they are in their learning.
Yeah, I guess I have 2 points on education, and then we'll move on. Basically, the first thing is, obviously it seems like we're using a really old type of model, and I feel like this with a lot of things that we're doing is we're using an old approach, not thinking forwardly enough. And when it comes to education, or even it seems like when it comes to wages, it seems like the current infrastructure that we have doesn't create a good plan, or it doesn't create a good means with which to actually fix some of these problems, which we can all kind of agree on the central what the problems are and see that.
The U.S. system is interesting enough. I believe its roots is based off an Austrian model that was designed to make kind of complacent, kind of factory and agrarian workers. I'm not 100% on this, but it's basically made to make,
and that does make sense. I mean, I think our big error in education is that we do assume that one size fits all, when in reality, and I could be wrong about the specific numbers, but there's essentially 12 different ways to learn or something like that. So basically, for someone like me, I'm very book smart. I can read something quickly and retain it, and I'm good at that kind of stuff. I can read an article and tell you what it says in under 20 minutes and whatever. That's fine. So schooling has always been beneficial for me, but for certain people, it isn't that way. My second point, and this kind of goes back to address your point about why, you said that the state has a lot of control over how we educate. And I mean, I think the reality is until we figure out a way to really make education actually fair, and not where it's, poor people are forced to go to the public school near their house, private schools, or, if you're able to afford it, you
charter
can.
Schools.
But even charter schools,
no one's saying they're perfect.
But yes, I mean, ultimately what we need to work for in order to actually to address things like automation, and to address things, to address the current problems of education is we need to figure out a way to make it more equal to where if you are going to school in Nebraska, you're getting the same experience as if you go to school in California. Now it should be shaped in a way that if you want to be an engineer, you're not learning about algebra, or I mean, not algebra. But if you're an engineer, you're not learning about political theory, for example, because why would you care about political theory? I mean, I think our cookie cutter method of it is horrible, but I think that ultimately exists because we have to reach everybody. We have to make sure that everybody gets that basic education. And until we figure out a better way to do that, I think we're going to be stuck with the same sort of cookie cutter, complacent education system, because I mean, you really do have to reach everybody needs, we've assessed as a society that everybody needs these certain things to learn. I would argue that they don't teach you a lot of things that everybody actually does need to learn. But nonetheless, we have these standards because we can't leave certain people behind that can't afford it. Charter schools are certainly not an answer. I would say not a very good one. But nonetheless, we're getting off topic. But that's
Actually,
I can actually. Well, I don't. Oh, sorry.
I'll go first. My problem is the government sets the mandate. We have a Department of Education that goes and says, "Oh, this is what you need to learn. This is what you will learn." And when we should really be going to Fortune 500 businesses or major American employers and like, what are you specifically looking for? What skills need to be trained and honed? And now, look, everyone should have it's nice to have everyone have an education, but not everyone has the same capacity. And, there's plenty of plumbers and electricians who make good money who, can't be brain surgeons. I don't think I could be a brain surgeon. I don't have the commitment. I don't want to put the 8 years in and all the time in residency. Okay. Not everyone's supposed to be a brain surgeon. Not everyone's an astronaut, but we need plumbers. We need electricians. We need these skills that, need specific training, like occupational training, that I think we could definitely send
mechanics.
People to. Mechanics. We send them there rather than to college where they might just, rack up a whole bunch of debt that
rack up a lot of more things.
Yeah, rack up a whole lot of debt, rack up some STDs or whatever you get in college, and cause problems when really it's like, look, you'll get a good job, you can start a family, you can afford to buy a home, you can raise your kids and do things you want to do, but we want everyone to be a winner. And I think those people are winners, and they can be winners with that job as well. We need to not stigmatize them as being blue collar. Just say, look, this is a perfectly valid way to make a living. Back to you, Steve.
No, I totally agree. I think tradesmen it's a great craft and it's much needed. Just a small note, like I remember my parents remodeled our house, and living in San Fernando Valley of LA is over 100 degrees, and one of the roofers, he was out there for a full 2 weeks just pounding away like shillings on the house. And I remember his baby mama came by in a full Cadillac on like 26 chrome rims. I mean, I talked to you, the most pimped out car. Like Pimp My Ride couldn't pimp out the car better than that. And had like 2 kids, and she looked fabulous. And I was like, these guys get paid well. I mean, he's not even the main, he's like a support guy. And it was like, they're busting their ass and doing hard, really good work. But at the same time, I was like, understand that this is no joke. Like you put in hard work, and it's a skill set because I was helping them out. But you do get paid because it's necessary. There's a high demand for it, and any market will tell you. There's a high demand for something and there's low supply, you can price it high. And so if you increase supply, you can have more people do it. And so that's where I get to the point of like, back to like, if we change the standard of education, kind of like what all the tech companies are doing, where they don't care what your degree is. If you can code, you can code. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Professional gaming, they don't care what you've done. If you've sat on the couch and killed it and crushed it in video games, like, dude, all power to you. So it's like, to me, I see that education, what it means for people, in the bachelor's and the master's, yes, they're still very valid. And PhDs is still very, very valid. I think it's what you learn and how you learn it is now coming to the forefront. And so it's like, if we allow people to learn what they want to, and you talk about taking away a minimum wage, so you allow people to work for wages. So it's like, if you have a young kid who you can hire because he's super excited, and you can start to give him a wage.
Yeah, and he's got the skills you're specifically looking for. There's not as much of a training risk. There's not as much of a turnover risk, because I'm pretty sure this person has the skills, because I can look at their their high school transcript and go, oh, I know you know this. I know maybe it's a fast food worker. I know your experience in like food work and your experience in all these other things. I don't have to worry about, well, are you a hard worker or not? I know you have the skills at least. Then I can decide if you're a hard work or not. That's the only thing you have to worry about.
Right. So I think that the combination of the two could actually make a really good blend of people being able to work. Because minimum wage doesn't affect like minimum wage workers in a lot of ways. Like if you get rid of it, it's not going to change your wage that much, because that's what you're getting paid. But transitioning to like a universal basic income. Like,
yeah, I was just about to add, because we've talked about this before, you and I, and so yeah, I'll let you explain the universal basic income.
I mean, I have a question though. How much time are we trying to run through? Because I know it's coming.
Probably another 10-15 minutes. Try to finish it up. I think we've already been going for almost an hour, so we'll probably touch on this, and then we'll do our concluding stuff and wrap up from there.
That would almost say that that we should leave universal basic income for another day, because I feel like it's going to open a can of worms.
All right, let's tease. Yeah, we'll tease it for next time.
Yeah, I think
Like-
we need half an hour to touch on UBI.
Yeah, I want to leave some proper time. My biggest thing about that and new thinking is that it doesn't work too well in diverse communities. Why it's been so successful in Finland and Nordic countries and some places in Europe is because of trust in the government. And as we kind of concluded with how we started with Chicago, there's lack of trust in the community, and that kind of trickles through everything. And so I think that the systemic mistrust is what's causing a lot of the issues.
It also helps that those countries have prohibitively high tax rates to start with, and UBI is a kind of a welfare reform for them, that their taxes are so high, and they've given so many different programs that it's like it's actually going to decrease their tax burden just by virtue of simplifying the entire welfare system, because their welfare system is out of control to start with. It's a completely different, completely different.
And that's what I'd like to keep till next time. But one of the principles of what UBI is trying to do, and what I'm kind of highlighting to, is that if you can take care of someone's basic needs, very minimal, you're just basically saying no one's going to be suffering. It's not saying they're going to have luxury. It just means that no one's going to be suffering. And then you allow them to explore their curiosity and do that and get paid. Again, you don't have minimum wage, so it's like, man, if I was to have my rent and I can buy a bite to eat every day, man, I don't give I'll work for $1 if it's my dream. Sure, that's fine. That's cool. Or maybe if I'm good at it, I can work for more. So it's things like that I see, like, in theory, that's what it could help. How we get there, we're not ready for it in a lot of ways.
It's a valid thing.
Yeah, that's fair. No, yeah, and I think I agree. Ideally, I think that's always been my goal as far as for the government. The government should be there to make sure that nobody is starving, nobody is suffering, nobody's sick. But then from there, then it should be up to us to determine how much of a good life we have. But yeah, we can table this for certainly another time.
But the fundamental problem is, at the end of the day, you're still taking other people's money at gunpoint to satisfy the needs of other individuals. Like that's the fundamental basis of any welfare tax.
But I would argue that you do that every time we declare war in some foreign country I don't want to go to.
Yes,
my tax dollars go to a lot of things.
I don't agree with that either. I don't agree with taking our tax dollars to go blow up people in the Middle East and then create more people that hate us. And then,
my argument
one of those missiles could fund a public school for a year.
Yeah, that's my point. Is that I think you vastly overrate the amount of money that we would need to spend to feed and clothe and shelter everybody in this country. It's not even we could have cut off like a third of our military, not even feel a dent in our influence around the world, and do all of that.
If I believed you for a second, our government could negotiate good rates for the food and clothing. Like, if I believed they had any capability of that, maybe I would think that was a good idea. The problem is, I know they're terrible. I watch what they do.
That's a whole different discussion. That's talking implementing. I'm talking just on a grander scale as far as like as far as philosophically. That's the whole point. But
this is my point. My point is, they are terrible at implementing just about anything. The one thing they're good at is killing people. They're not very good at creating social programs, at getting people out of poverty. War on poverty. We spent $20 trillion and we have more people impoverished. They are not good at these societal utopian programs. They're bad at it.
And I would argue that there's a variety of factors that determine why politicians are not good at these certain things. But again, that's also another discussion for another time.
Self-interest.
Self-interest. Ultimately, there's a number of different factors.
The fact that the interest of them looking out for themselves is more beneficial than looking out for the interests of the people they are hired.
But also, too, you have to win an election. You have another party.
Yes, but that's my point. The misalignment, like the way our system is set up, is that they can still be more profitable for themselves by screwing over the majority of people.
Term limits, not a term limits.
I agree. Term limits would be amazing.
Address that. But yeah, also another thing we can talk about another time. We have a lot of things to talk about.
But we're getting off topic, so I guess we could touch on the national championship game.
Let's talk about that real quick, because that was really a fantastic game. Anybody who didn't get the chance to watch it, you really did miss out. Ghost. It was a great game.
I heard the end on the radio. I heard the knee.
Alabama finally went down.
That was the most exciting play, man.
Yeah, the over.
That
The
1
over
second
hit.
took forever. That's probably the longest play.
And
Well-
they're talking about it for like 10 minutes on the radio after the onside kick.
Well, no, they were reviewing the onside kick because they wanted to make sure that the kicker got it. And actually, to be fair, that was probably the best executed onside kick I've ever seen. The kicker got ahead of the ball and waited for it to go 10 yards and then fell on it. Like, it was literally, you could never see it executed more. I do hope, Steven, that your Niners do draft a receiver maybe from that team, because it seemed like all the good ones were on the other team, on Clemson this time around. Very shocking. I was surprised. I didn't think that Alabama would beat Clemson by a lot, but I really didn't think they would actually lose. Just a few stats that make this crazy. Alabama got 15, and I don't know if they didn't score one today. They did get a turnover that led to a touchdown, but they have 15 touchdowns scored by defense or or by special teams. And if you put that in other terms, they would have finished the season 6-8. So 6-6, assuming they didn't play the 2 extra championships. They would have finished at 500 with their offense not scoring a single point through the entire season.
Gosh.
So their defense was good. It was historically good to the point where I heard on a podcast on The Ringer them say that this is arguably the best college defense we've ever seen. And they got smoked by Watson, who is obviously now receiving the call from LeBron James at this moment, saying "Welcome to Cleveland." So I'm sorry for you ahead of
Johnny
time,
Manziel, man, he's gonna come back.
Deshaun Watson.
Funny how LeBron James, the basketball star, welcomes you to the football team.
I welcome you to the abyss that is the Cleveland Browns.
Our new producer, Tim, said briefly to me that LeBron was going to junior producer. He's an intern. He said it at one point that LeBron was going to come and play tight end, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, but he'd just immediately go down with like a knee injury, and Cleveland would just they would exercise the Browns. They would just say, "No, you're gone."
I think if Cleveland won another championship and then and LeBron beat the Warriors and Durant and all of them, I think that Cleveland would be okay with him going to the Browns and trying to win one for them. I feel like that would be okay.
I don't think he'll play for the Indians in the part-time too. Like, he should just do all 3. He can.
And then go play hockey as well, because I think LeBron on skates would be insane. Are you kidding me? Like,
Does Cleveland have nice?
LeBron?
I don't.
And now the best news about all of this, though, is that I am 1-0 in my New Year's predictions that I made on our last podcast that everybody should go check out, where I said that this is going to be the year of rematches. I did say Clemson, Alabama, and I said that I don't think I mentioned that Clemson was going to win. I'm not going to be that bold.
So you're 1-0 in 2017.
I'm 1-0 in 2017.
How was your 2016 prediction?
Terrible. And also my playoff picks for this weekend were 1-3, so I can't really bust out much.
4-0.
You didn't pick with the spread, so I don't.
Oh,
give you that high five.
It's just for a pool. I mean.
Oh, okay. Well, Either way, yeah. So disappointing week wildcard wise, but I think the college between the Rose Bowl game, which was fantastic, and this final, we've had some pretty good college games to make up for the atrocious first round of the playoffs in the NFL. That's basically all I have to say on the matter. My other little sports thing I want to mention is that the Texans are 16-point underdogs to the Patriots. I think it's the largest spread ever in the playoffs. Do not be stupid. Take the Patriots. You will not be sorry. That is all I really have to say about that. So yeah,
let's be honest. This is the Patriots Super Bowl to lose.
They're going to win by 30. I mean, come on.
This is the Patriots Super Bowl to lose, and I do not see the Texans anywhere near. The Texans are like a deer in headlights, but a deer in headlights of like a bullet train. Okay.
Yeah, and then Osweiler has to throw a 3-yard out and still manages to fall.
No. Well, let's be clear. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney could take out Tom Brady's knee by accident, and then Jimmy Garoppolo would still win the game by 20 points.
They might cover at that point, though. They might only win by 10.
Jesus.
Yeah, no, it's ugly. It's gonna be ugly.
I mean, I've seen 5,000 to 1 odds. So
the Texans. I wonder what the odds are on the Texans to win the Super Bowl.
True, but the Texans are no Hillary Clinton. Oh, wait, the soccer.
I don't really actually get that reference, but I'm just gonna let that one go over my head on that one.
I'm just saying they're not that plausible.
She was very deserving of the presidency.
Plausible, not deserving. Name one qualification, Kaz.
I prefer somebody who's been in the room.
Whoa, one qualification.
She's experienced. She knows government.
Hitler was an experienced politician. That doesn't mean
he wasn't. He was a crazy guy who wrote books in jail.
By the end, he was an experienced leader that led Germany to almost defeat the entirety of Russia and Western Europe at the same time. I don't get your
argument, but I don't want to argue about Hillary right now. Steven, do you have any closing statements you want to make for us to sign off here?
On track.
Yeah, I mean, my closing statement with minimum wage is essentially that technology can help us get to a point where I think minimum wage, education, work, work wages, and universal basic income will all be kind of obsolete, and people will just be doing what they want to do, and not worrying about food or shelter. Because that's my futuristic, optimistic goal, and that's how I sleep happy at night. But how we get there in the reality, I think there's a lot of work, and we can discuss what universal basic income and kind of the the nitty gritty of why it's not plausible today. Next time or some other time.
And of course, the minimum wage is a violation of agreement between two consenting parties, and I think the government has no business being involved with that. And I also think that individuals can come up with a much better solution than government bureaucrats. That's what it fundamentally comes down to. Is I think that the people not given unlimited power and the ability to basically break the rules of how we operate in a consenting relationship will have a much better solution than people who can break those rules. So that's just my spiel on minimum wage.
All right. Well, thank you guys again for joining me. It's been a real treat. You guys are passionate. We all obviously very much care about these issues. Again, I want to encourage our listeners at home. If you're mad or upset about anything you heard, specifically from Ghost, most likely.
What are you staring at me for?
That is not an excuse to be offended or mad or stop listening or stop caring. Your job is to find the right stats and arguments to refute what he says or shut up. Now I'm going to go home and do exactly that. I want to thank everybody for joining us this 2017. We'll be back hopefully sometime next week, a date to be determined. We'll be discussing that universal basic income and kind of pick up some of these topics again, because I think there's still much more to discuss on this. And then maybe we'll touch upon something else that's very controversial, maybe Black Lives Matter podcast, but I won't give it away just yet.
Let's save that for a whole podcast.
All right, well, yeah, maybe we'll do that whole podcast. But so
I'll have to read some books.
Yes, and, I need to find those stats to refute his arguments after all. So thank you everybody for listening. It's been Diploma Sports, an intelligent intersection of politics and sports. My name is SC, and we have Ghost and Steven. Thank you again for listening, and have a good night.
All right.